Hi, I'm Casey.
I'm Drew. We're the husband and wife team, two nomadic hearts from Bend, Oregon.
We are Air Force veterans and were both medically separated in 2018. Drew and I plan on traveling to 16 different veteran homes over 13,000 miles circling the United States.
Our current mission is to interview both active and veterans of all wars for the United States, bridging the gap between the two. This is their story. Okay, welcome everybody. With me I have the Metzes. We have both Casey and Bri. They are both active duty KC-10 pilots. Mr. Casey Metz was a fellow classmate of mine in pilot training, and then his follow-on, he was a T6 instructor, so he can give you the first phase of pilot training, all the lowdowns of what to expect. And then his beautiful wife, Bri, she took on phase 2 as a T1 instructor, and we can hear the lowdown on that. So without further ado, let's begin. So Metz, where are you from, man? Give us a little background on yourself.
What's up, man? Yeah, thanks for doing this with us. We're excited. I am originally from Washington State. Olympia, which is like 45 minutes south of Seattle. Grew up there, went to high school there, and left once I graduated high school to go to college.
Okay. Bri, where are you from?
Missouri. And I left Missouri ASAP when I was 17 and moved to Texas to go to college.
So commissioning, you both commissioned differently. Casey, how did you commission, and where did you commission from?
Yeah, man. So I went to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. My goal was to eventually get a pilot slot and start to fly airplanes, and I figured that was the path I could take that would give me the best chances of getting to pilot training. And so after 4 years there, I commissioned as a second lieutenant.
That's awesome. And a little bit of cool background of your heritage. Your father was a pilot as well, right? And if I'm not mistaken, he flew the C-141, the Golden Bear?
Yeah, he did. My dad was a pilot in the Air Force. He flew the C-141s and then the C-17s once they became a thing. And I actually have an uncle who was a pilot in the Air Force, and my grandfather was a pilot in the Air Force as well.
And then Bri, you definitely have a lot more of the rough around the edges Texas upbringing to that commission. So where did you go to commission, and what was that experience like for you in college?
So I did not have this deep-rooted aspiration to be a pilot in the Air Force. I really just wanted the Air Force to pay for my college. So I got a scholarship through ROTC with my best friend and packed up and moved to Texas, went to college at University of Texas in San Antonio, and did ROTC there for 4 years.
Obviously, along the way, I decided to put in for a pilot slot, and here I am. My dad was in the Air Force as an enlisted maintainer for like 2 years, and then they were letting people out, and my mom was having babies, so he got out. But yeah, I've got, some uncles in the Army and stuff, but as far as piloting, I'll be the first, or I am the first.
You're it. You are the first. That's pretty epic.
I'm the only one ever. So
a little bit about sports and upbringing. One thing that I kind of correlate, especially to the pilots that I interview, the one thing that seems to be the most connected is those that, I don't want to say succeed the most, but those that seem to find the most happiness and home in the community are those that understand camaraderie. And bromanship doesn't just mean like the sexist term of like, bros and girls, but like understanding how to work within a team. And one of the commonalities I find with most pilots is that they played sports. So both you guys I know have kind of a high school background. Even Metz, you played in college a little bit. So what were sports? Casey, I'll start with you. What did they mean to you growing up, and did you participate, and what did you learn from them?
Yeah, man. Me and my little brother and little sister all played sports, all growing up through elementary school, middle school, and high school. That more or less was kind of what our lives revolved around, and what our parents' lives revolved around was their children playing sports. It was good though. So kind of big takeaways looking back now is obviously learning how to be a part of a team. Which is good, and that teaches you more, or a lot more things, or other rabbit holes we could go down. But it also I think teaches you how to like lose, if that sounds, if that's the best way to put that. How to deal with failure and deal with loss, which obviously happens in the Air Force and being a pilot. Like, you mess things up, you fail in pilot training, you hook a ride or whatever. So I think playing sports and just being a part of a team like that, and it translates well over to like the pilot training community, kind of the squadron, like you were saying, camaraderie, that kind of idea of being a part of a team, and subsequently a squadron once you get into pilot training and out of pilot training wherever you go after that.
I love that answer. That was really good, Mites. Bri, what about you? What does
follow
sports
that
mean to
up.
you? Do you see any correlation? You can tell me I'm full of shit. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was I was a runner in high school, and as cliche as it might sound, those were my best friends. My 5 teammates that we ran cross country and track, and eventually we did everything together. And that's kind of how pilot training and every sort of follow-on training and even follow-on airplanes has been. Like, all of our best friends come from the community that we're working in. So it just kind of, that's the way that cookie crumbles. But it's really nice too, because, we have friends that we can hang out on outside of work, but even inside work, we know that we have this solid group of people that we can trust with literally our lives in most cases. Since now we're both flying dual piloted aircraft. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I can see the correlation as well. So
I love that. Good. Okay. So we'll get into the KC-10 stuff more later on, because I think that's cool that you guys have such a current look, especially at the schoolhouse. But before that, I think UPT, let's get into that. So for anybody that's interested in UPT, I wanted to ask you what are 2 things that each of you wish that you had known before you showed up day one of pilot training?
So for me, I would back that up even further. Prior to commissioning as an active duty Air Force officer, I wish I had some idea of what the Guard and Reserves had to offer, especially towards
pilots. So shout out to all my Guard Reserve buddies that found that secret that no one else knew about. That obviously is a solid gig if you can swing it. But and the second thing that I didn't really know about prior to even putting in for a pilot slot was ENJJPT and what that had to offer and what it even was. And so when I put in for a rated slot, I didn't put in for ENJJPT because I had no idea what it was. And it was kind of like a same day decision, like, hey, whoever wants to put in for it, let us know now. And I was like, well, I don't know what that is, so I'm not going to put in for it.
What is ENJJPT?
Euro-NATO Joint Jet Pilot Training. It's the 4th pilot training base that doesn't have the mighty T1 Jayhawk. Shout out to my T1 FAIPS. The pipeline is the T6 straight to T38s. Honestly, it will increase your chances of getting a fighter pilot. It's not a sure thing. Obviously, nothing's a sure thing in the Air Force, but it's at a different base than the other pilot training bases that do include a heavy track. It's primarily the fighter bomber track at ENJJPT, and so that's what that is. In hindsight, I'm glad I didn't put in for it, and I'm glad that I went to Del Rio instead, because I met this hunk. But and I don't think I would have otherwise. But yeah, that's pretty much ENJJPT is. But to answer your question, prior to getting to pilot training, a couple things I didn't know or didn't realize. This might seem silly, but like the housing situation. So I kind of got there and they like put me up in a hotel room, and I was like, sweet, how long am I going to be in a hotel room? And they were like, well,
how does the housing situation work? That's important. I think that's another question. We'll save that question because that is important, because it kind of goes into how you guys met. Okay, so those are your 2. So you said ENJJPT, and you said that you had wished that you knew about AGR and the Guard and the Reserve before.
Yep.
Cool. All right, Casey, on to you. What are your 2 things that you wish that you knew?
Yeah, man. So number one is money management, which I know Bri chuckles at that, and if like any of my family ends up watching this video, they'll probably chuckle at that too, because especially straight out of college, whether it's, you know, ROTC or the academy or wherever you're coming from, you're like making a pretty good paycheck right off the bat, and you have this money and you don't have to pay for healthcare, you don't have to pay for like dental
Housing.
or anything like that. You just have this money that all of a sudden the government's giving you, and you're like, oh look, I can do and buy whatever I want to do, which is like true to a certain extent. Like, you don't want to overextend yourself, but like there are so many other things, like constructive things you can do with your money other than just, you know, flush it right down the toilet, which I am a prime example of having done earlier in my young Air Force career. But yeah, better money management as far as, you know, putting money away.
What are some of those examples that you've learned since you've been an active duty officer that you wish that you had invested in or put your money in?
So there's a thing called in the Air Force called the Roth TSP, and it's a retirement fund essentially, and you put X amount of money in, and up to a certain percentage of the amount of money that you put into it, the government will match that amount of money. It's a relatively small percentage, but the sooner you start putting money into it, that's more money that the government is going to match and give you into your retirement fund. So it correct me if I'm wrong, babe, but like that's something that you can do almost, I think, immediately as soon as you commission.
Yeah, for sure. And you can do Roth or traditional, whichever one you feel more comfortable with, depending on when you feel like your money should get taxed. But I think it's 5%, and the matching thing that deals with the blended retirement system, which we did opt into immediately because we were still so new in the military. And I would say from here on out, anybody that's joining the military should definitely do the blended retirement system if they get that opportunity to. Whereas, you know, we had a lot of people and a lot of friends that had been in the military for so long that just the pros didn't outweigh the cons for them because they'd been in for much longer. But because we were still pretty new, blended retirement system made sense. But yeah, both of us at least max out that percentage that the Air Force will match in terms of that TSP. And then on our side gig is a Roth IRA through Vanguard for the both of us as well. So we're trying to sit pretty when we're 60, 59 and a half.
Disclaimer, we are not finance experts, so don't take any of our advice. Or hold us liable for anything that doesn't work out.
I read like one book once.
No, that was great knowledge. I think that you guys just talking about the TSP blended and how you could do it with the Roth too. I'll put the link here in the end for those that want to know more about the retirement blended or Roth. There's a great YouTube video, so that'll be here. Okay, cool. That covers you. So Casey, number 2, what is the second thing you learned or wish that you had known before you got to pilot training?
So anyone who gives enough of a shit to, sorry, I don't know if we can cuss or not, but
yeah, you can swear. Swearing's totally chill.
Me too, baby.
So anyone who gives enough of a shit to ask me, they'll be like, hey, what was pilot training like for you, or what was your least favorite part of pilot training? And it's hands down IFS, initial flight screening, and I think it's called initial flight training now, so it's changed to IFT. And I say you do that before you start pilot training. There are some circumstances where if you have like your private pilot's license, you may not have to go to IFS or IFT.
Where they won't let you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I didn't have that, so I had to go to IFS. But that was hands down my least favorite part of pilot training. And to answer your question, what I wish I would have known is to not necessarily stress about that initial part, because I, to this day, think that it helped me exactly 0%. Like moving forward in pilot training and like my flying career, I retained nothing from it. It was all totally canned stuff, and there was no actual, in my opinion, learning airmanship about it. Like I struggled a lot through IFS. I didn't enjoy it. It seemingly took forever, and I wish that I would not have stressed about it so much, because it didn't really matter that much.
So you went through it before IFT. So when I went through, I think only like 2 people in my whole class got cut, but you were going through when like half your class was getting
If I
cut.
remember correctly, it wasn't like half the class. There were a couple people that got the boot because like I remember one guy like failed a test too many times, like an academic test, which, you know, that'll happen in pilot, like normal pilot training too, not just IFS or IFT. But it wasn't like half the class.
He was also in that like transition area where they were moving to IFT. So I think, you know, there was a time in IFS history where I agree, like half the class was booted. But there came a time where they started to transition to IFT, and it was more of a training than a selection.
Or screening.
Yeah. And so
yeah, to make a long answer longer, I wish I would have known to not stress about that. Like IFS or IFT did not help that much for me. Maybe some people it did, but like pilot training started for me.
I learned how to do like the MADL and EPs and not having any flying experience, but to not have to hear, because for years it was like you were getting cut, right? Like it was almost like a haze kind of to it, it sounds like.
I still feel like it was a haze. My advice for IFS would be just consider how many people have gone through it and successfully passed IFS, and all the way through pilot training into your follow-on assignments and the flying training units. Like, you're not the first person to go through this program. You're not the first person to think that it's very overwhelming. And it is.
Pretty good stuff to know about IFS. Okay, so then I think that the meat and potatoes here is talking about this stuff and letting you guys kind of take it over. So, Metz, you were a T6 FAIP. Can you explain to me what the process of being a T6 student is like? And what is a FAIP?
So
Yeah, what's a FAIP?
You're a T6 student when you start pilot training. That's the first phase of pilot training. So you're a lot of people, not everyone, because again, you've been IFS or IFT, you may have your PPL. So there are some people who may have experience flying airplanes already. It may or may not be in military airplanes, because there are also prior enlisted people who have commissioned as officers through OTS or some other avenue, that were prior loadmasters or boom operators, whatever it is, that have now commissioned as second lieutenants and gone on pilot training. So you start out in T6s, and for I think a lot of people, it's the very basic. Like, you're starting from ground zero, and you're learning everything there is to know about flying, like from aerodynamics and how the air flows over the wing of an airplane, to how to specifically fly this aircraft in formation with this other aircraft. There's all the nuances, all the systems of the airplane, all the different things you can do with that airplane specifically, but then also there's general aviation knowledge too, like how to fly an instrument approach, for example, which is just general knowledge that every pilot knows how to do. So it's kind of a two branches, I guess, if you will, for lack of a better phrase. It's a lot of stuff. It's a fire hose. That's the term you'll hear a lot of times, is you just are getting sprayed with a fire hose, and you got to try to be a sponge and absorb as much as you can. Because again, you're going from nothing, like potentially zero aviation knowledge at all, and learning how to fly this airplane on your own, which is what you're working towards, because I'm not exactly sure what the UPT syllabus is right now, but Drew, like when you and I went through pilot training.
Yeah, can you break down the phases of the syllabus for me from what you remember?
When you and I went through pilot training together, it was mid-phase.
Well, talk about, when I left, when you left instructing, what was the syllabus?
When most recently, what it was there was one contact check ride, which was can you fly the airplane at a consistent altitude, like straight and level? Can you fly normal pattern? Can you land the airplane safely? Can you, do power on stalls or traffic pattern stalls and steep turns and stuff like that? There was an instrument check ride, which was, like I mentioned earlier, instrument approaches, precision approaches, non-precision approaches, et cetera, and then depending on where you tracked, because after your instrument check ride, you went to track. They changed it like pretty significantly. So you either tracked to a T1, which is what Bri was a FAIP in, or you tracked to a T38, which was the fighter bomber track. And if you tracked to a T1, you got a navigation check ride as your last check ride in T6s, which is where you practice flying off station somewhere outside of the local area. And if you tracked to T38s, you would get a formation check ride, which is where you would fly against the same airplane. You'd fly against another T6, but you practice flying in formation with this other airplane. To my knowledge, or that was what it was most recently when we left. I'm sure it's changed now. We hear rumors every now and then of things changing and new things being formulated. But to answer your second question now, as far as what is a FAIP goes, once you graduate pilot training, or you're done with your last check ride, I should say, not necessarily graduated, you finish your last check ride and then you have your drop night and then you graduate. So on your drop night, just prior to that, every student is racked and stacked based on how they did in pilot training, on their check rides, on their daily rides, a kind of litany of other things. And typically the number one person in the class will get their number one choice if it's available in the Air Force. Again, it needs of the Air Force. If the number one guy's number one choice isn't available, he's not going to get it, but typically it works out that way. Typically, FAIPing isn't high on a lot of people's lists, so they have to kind of choose who they want to have FAIPed or who they want to keep around as instructors, because they have to keep instructors around. They can't just bring people who have flown other airplanes in to be instructors in the T6. They'll keep around these people who have just graduated pilot training as first assignment instructor pilots, and that's what FAIP stands for. So that's what both Bri and I ended up doing first. Was when we graduated, we both got FAIPed, and we went to pilot instructor training, which is PIT for short, up at
Acronyms.
Randolph. Yeah.
Welcome to the Air Force.
Randolph Air Force Base. Learned, quote unquote, how to be an instructor, and then went back to start flying with students as soon as we were done with that. And that was only like 4 or 5 months or so.
Yep.
And from there, we just start flying the line, flying with students and teaching them how to do what we just got done doing.
Yep. Just like that.
We got some great Casey 10 talk with you. So everybody, welcome Casey. She finished her class, so she gets to sit in the rest of the interview. It's fun because all of us as couples have the commonality of being married and serving together. It's a little bit different with Casey and Bri, just with the inherent danger of flying. So Bri, for the next question for you, we finished kind of what phase 1 is for UPT. Let's take it to phase 2. What are the options of going to, as mentioned, and if you go with T1s, what do students expect and what are the different phases?
Cool. Yeah. So going T1s, you're kind of a heavy track, so you can expect cargo planes, refuelers, reconnaissance airplanes. You can even go into some AFSOC options. There are onesie twosie people that get bombers out of T1s, but that usually entails their spouse being like a nav or something on that same airplane. So to try to get them at the same base, same airplane, which the Air Force does try to look out for you in that aspect when you're married. But yeah, so that there's a ton of airplanes you could go fly after the T1, but none of them will be fighters, which honestly some people prefer. Like Casey, for instance, was like, I want to go T1s. Like, I want, I'm not looking to go fast. I'm just looking to fly airplanes and, maybe hit up the airlines at the end of this and like already have all this heavy dual engine, multi-engine time and, serve my country while I'm doing it. So
having a bathroom on the airplane is pretty tight.
that's
also
huge. Sometimes the KC-10 has 2 bathrooms. Soft plug for 10s. They're going away. Sorry.
So then I'm a student. I show up first day for training with you. What happens in a standard day to day in a life of a T1 student?
Pre-COVID, you'll spend basically all day, every day in the flight room, looking at 12 hours.
How does that work? What is formal release work and what is the 12-hour rule at UPT?
Formal release, a lot of people look at it as hazing the students, like forcing them to be there all day, every day, can't do anything, think about anything else. But ultimately what it's intended to do is force you to be around for like just pilot talk around the room. Sorry, this dog is like moving this table. So basically you'll show up in the morning, you'll do a formal brief. Basically someone will throw up a PowerPoint with weather NOTAMs, which if you don't know what NOTAMs are, they're like airfield remarks in terms of like, hey, the runways are wet, or
closed.
This taxiway is closed, or the whole base is closed. And that's where you go to check yourself so you don't show up at an airport that's closed, or you request an instrument approach that is NOTAMed out of service, which I have never done in my life. I've definitely done that with other instructors as well. But anyway, so that's kind of how formal brief works. And then everyone kind of breaks up for the morning flights, because that's usually how T1s goes. You have like morning flights and then afternoon flights. So while the morning flighters are briefing, the afternoon flighters are usually making jalapeno popcorn. That's a must. If you don't know how to make popcorn in a popcorn maker, figure it out. And, then they're just studying. So once the first go takes off, or at least leaves the flight room, we might have emergency procedure quizzes. We might have stand-ups where we're going to stand students up, give them a scenario like, hey, your airplane's on fire. This is where you're at. This is how fast you're going. This is how many people are in your airplane. You have the aircraft. And they just have to bring it to a logical
My hands just started
conclusion.
sweating really bad just now.
Yeah. And so you just bring it to a logical conclusion, right? And then anything you do wrong, you get debriefed on, and whatever, it's no harm, no foul, because we are talking about it at, level 0, speed 0. So it's kind of nice to go over all that stuff. And then, and being in the flight room and just hearing other students talk, you kind of catch wind of like what they dorked up that day or the other day, and you can kind of learn from other people's mistakes. We started incorporating like end of formal release, so at the end of the 12-hour day, like lessons learned. So we'd have the students stand up, and for whatever reason during lessons learned they just could not remember a single thing they ever did wrong, which is again why it's nice to just be in the flight room and hearing about it instead of putting them on the spot and being like, hey, what'd you do wrong today? And then they're like, nothing, I'm Chuck Yeager. So but yeah, it's nice. It's good learning experience, and hopefully you can learn from other people's mistakes, or at least learn techniques that might sound, like something you might be interested in throughout the day. But long story short, jalapeno popcorn, EPQs, making fun of everybody else for doing something stupid, which is great because everyone does something stupid. There's not a single pilot, except for maybe Chuck Yeager, that has not done something stupid in the airplane and that can laugh about it. And that's the best part, is that you recognize that you are in a training environment and you are going to mess things up.
And even once I was an instructor, I still didn't fly a perfect jet every single day. And the sooner you can realize that you're not perfect, you're never going to be perfect, you're going to make mistakes, and you can learn from them instead of like dwelling on your mistakes and thinking you're a failure and
thinking, woe is me, I'll never get through pilot training. Just remember, like, a lot of people get through pilot training. You know, everyone that's a pilot did this too. You know, this is not the first time these problems have been had. So that's like a real big thing that got me through IFT, got me through T6s, got me through T1s, even got me through FAIPing. Like, other people have done this. A lot of other people have done this. So if there's any time, like ever a time that you're like, this is too much, I can't handle it, or I'm not good enough, or whatever, I mean, you're wrong, you know? So you just kind of got to not quit. And that's really the best advice I can give.
Yeah. That translates, I mean, that's not only in pilot training too, that translates well over to like the very small amount of time we've spent in AMC. We've had to go through a formal training program again here at McGuire. Like, that translates over to this outside of pilot training too. Like, you fly with a crew, you fly with other officers, other enlisted people now, like, you know, flight engineers, boom operators. You know, if you're flying a C-17, you got load masters on the jet. The quickest way you can like make an ass of yourself is to just do something dumb and come up with an excuse as to why it wasn't your fault. Like, one, from what I've seen, because like it's happened to me, like the enlisted people on the jet are going to call you out and be like, man, you really praying that one in, dude. I'll be like, yeah, I did.
Take
Sorry.
that, Texas.
But so yeah, like learning from other people's mistakes. It is just something that happens not only in the flying community, but just kind of everywhere all the time.
Life lessons. You learned them here.
So Bri, I do have a question for you. When you were in training as a woman, did you feel like you had to prove something?
I did encounter some individuals and some situations where, and being the type A blooming personality that I am, I stuck up for myself, and I had to explain myself and say, like, hey, just so you see where I'm at with this, like, had anyone else in the flight room said this, it wouldn't have been an issue, but because I said it, or I acted this way, or I did this, you felt the need to say something to me about it, and I'm not going to let that fly. I can't guarantee that every female is going to have that extrovert quality to just be like, hey man, that's not right. But, you know, there were times where I felt myself sticking up for me being what those individuals would say would be like, you're being a lot, or really loud, or over the top, or whatever, or like bossy. And in my opinion, I was just being like every other pilot in the flight room. You know what I mean? It's just, I happen to be the girl, and you happen to be calling me out instead of everyone else. So yeah, I mean, I saw it to a small extent. You know, I've read books and listened to interviews of females that went through pilot training much prior to me, and I had it great, you know, compared to them. But I also think that the community is evolving, and the minute you stick up for yourself, people are gonna be like, you know what, I can't talk, you know, crap to her, because she's just going to throw it right back in my face. You know what I mean? She's not going to bow down and be like, yeah, oh, I'm a girl. You know what I mean? I straight up was told that I wasn't going to get a pilot slot while I was in college because I was a girl. Really? In your face. But, yeah. So, yeah, of course, I've seen it. And I've seen it happen to other girls, too. I've stuck up for other girls as well. You know, and I've also seen that girls tend to be more emotional than guys. I think everybody knows that. So I've seen girls crying at drop nights that haven't started pilot training yet, that are really worried about not having what it takes and not getting through the program. But again, I say, you're not the first girl to go through pilot training. Commit to yourself and to the program that this is what you want to do, and you're going to do whatever it takes to get through it, regardless of how you're being treated. I think that's what's most important. So on a completely like non-pilot aspect of like females in the Air Force, I guess, new 2903 came out, we can have our hair in a braid. That's why I have these luscious curly locks down here, because I was in a braid all day. But literally last weekend, I overheard someone saying, anyone who wears a braid or complies with the lessened restrictions of the 2903, whereas you don't have to wear a bun anymore, you can wear a braid or 2 braids or just a low pony, is going to have a certain connotation with that hairstyle. So like, you know, you're going to be viewed a certain way if you decide to wear your hair in a braid. And I literally heard that and I was like, absolutely not. Don't care. Like, 2903 is a rig. If we're following the rig, like, there should not be some like background connotation with a certain hairstyle. And why does a hairstyle make any impact on the officer I am, the pilot I am, the female I am? Like, it doesn't matter, other than the fact that my hair can look flawless for the rest of the night instead of that bun, which you can't do anything with at the end of the day. You just leave it in a bun or throw it up in a ponytail, I guess. But yeah, I've seen it. I see it. You know, culture is changing.
Yeah, that's really good. And then I'm super curious as far as you guys being in the same career field and being married, and that's amazing. That's something that we didn't experience. So what is that like to be in the same career field, to fly together, and then to come home at the end of the day and talk about it all?
But when you texted us that question, like, I knew the answer immediately. And the bottom line is that it's really cool, I think, and it's a really good benefit for not only us as pilots, but for us, like, for our marriage too, I think, because one, if you look at it from purely a pilot's perspective, like, we get to sit and study. If, you know, we're going through initial qualification for the 10, and we get to sit and study together, we get to like practice things together, bounce things off each other, et cetera, which is awesome and super helpful because, you know, we can do that whenever we want to do that.
And studying with Metz is one of the best. Like, I didn't do well until Metz was my roommate, and like, because we kind of study the same way, like that procrastination kind of study thing, but then you cram it all in like 4 hours. Yeah, that's my...
Sidebar, though, you remember the one time where we had a sim, or it was like a bamboo bomber or something in pilot training on a Friday? It was like a Friday drop night. And for whatever reason, you and I decided to just get on a Thursday. And we woke up the next morning and we're just like, oh God. We were just hurt the entire day. Oh my gosh, we were just hurt the entire day, and then did our bamboo bomber, and then eventually made it out to drop night in time.
For round 2.
Shout out slap you. That was your drop night, bud.
We have a 40-minute drive home from base, at least now. When we were FAIPS, we lived on base, which is huge. But we'll call each other and just, like, unfortunately complain, because what else are you going to do about your day? So we'll complain about like what we did wrong, because we, again, have high expectations of ourselves being prior FAIPS, moving into a new airframe. Like, we just expect a lot out of ourselves. And so we'll just complain. We'll complain about the weather, like today, or maintenance issues, or even instructors. Like, I'm sure plenty of people have complained about me and Casey as an instructor, or they loved us so much. Yeah. Or they got the old double Metz hook. So they'd go T6s, hook with him on a check ride, and then come to me and hook with me.
It's a pretty exclusive club.
There's an exclusive club for that. But yeah, no, we really love it. And as far as inherent dangers are concerned, I think we both like wholeheartedly walked into this career field, and it is obvious that flying is inherently dangerous, and, you know, taking off is easy, landing's the hard part, all that. Plus, we've both experienced loss in terms of aircraft fatalities in the Air Force. You know, it does not come as a surprise to us that that is a potential thing that could happen, but, you know, I wouldn't say we dwell on it, and, you know, I don't think we have any hesitations. We trust each other's capacity to fly.
It's not something like the bad stuff that, has happened in the past. It's not something that like it just goes away. It's like, oh, you just get over it. It's just something that you like kind of learn to live with, I guess. Like it's just an experience that you've been through, and you now have that life experience that has happened to you. And being in the same career field, or now same career field, same airplane for us now, we've experienced a lot of those things together, which I said there's 2 points or 2 answers, and this is the second one. Is it's really good for our marriage too, I think, because to kind of branch off of what she said, we get to just bitch to each other, like not at each other, but like, well, we do that too sometimes, but we get to like, oh, this guy
it's not a perfect
or this
science.
girl like sucks. I screwed this up. Whatever. Today sucked. This week sucked. Cool. Like get that off our chest. We get to vent to each other. We get to
Mitigate with Moscow mules.
yeah. We get to bring work home, which some people may or may not say is a good or is a bad thing. I think that it is a good thing to a certain extent. Like we can talk about it, obviously, and do that venting. Because I think if we didn't, it would just eventually, it might sound a little cliche, but just kind of like get bottled up and eventually come bursting out, so to speak, in some bad way, I guess.
Having that commonality is super cool. I don't know. I think having that is amazing.
I remember like losing a friend in sixes when I was there with you, and it was an active duty friend, and Casey didn't know that person, and then when Graz died, that was a different situation because of the connection, and the grieving happened. I don't know, I just felt better a lot quicker and able to not compartmentalize, but just understand through the community, and having her was just critical in that. And like for you guys, like what is that, I don't think you guys have had to deal with it a whole lot, but I mean, there was a lot at like 3 years there. How many deaths were at Laughlin? 3 deaths, and all 3 of them were instructors, So yeah, that is like inherently dangerous.
Yeah.
It really is. And, I was more involved with the investigation board of Graz's death than I would have originally liked to be, but definitely having Casey at home to talk to about the things I could talk to him about was huge. And then also, like, everyone, again, we're all best friends. Like, every time we go to pilot training, you get a whole group of new best friends, and then you go to the next thing, you got a whole new group of best friends, and everyone is so tight, especially the FAIP community is so tight-knit. And anytime we had a fatality like that, especially at Laughlin, it seemed like it was happening every November for years in a row. We'd have a 38 fatality. Everyone would just come together and support and figure out what we needed, and it's a cool community to be a part of, and it really is a family. Shout out to the Mafia.
Yeah. Well, that was a good thing. Thanks for talking about that one, guys, because I think that's the big question that people are going to want to know, seeing this, like you two are doing something and look up the news and it's not looking good. So I do want to ask your opinion. I asked somebody earlier who's a B course instructor for 16s, and he definitely was talking about the training tempo, and that has led to the rash of accidents. What do you two see as far as the curriculum goes in the Air Force? Do you feel like they're cutting corners to try to produce more pilots, and do you think it's hurting us, or what do you guys feel as far as your experiences going through and what you see now?
When you and I went through pilot training together, there was so many more like rides in the aircraft that you got. And now I can't speak for what's going on in pilot training right now with like pilot training or UPT 2.5 or whatever it is. I know absolutely nothing about that. But I will say that from the time I went through pilot training as a student to the time that I left Laughlin as an instructor, UPT got changed so drastically. Students were receiving so many fewer flights. They were just logging so many fewer flight hours, which sucks because you're not able to build the airmanship. Like, you could do something in a simulator and then go and do the exact same thing in an airplane, and there's a difference. Like, there is a difference in being in the actual airplane and flying the airplane and building and gaining that airmanship than there is in the simulator. It's just, I'm sure there's a lot smarter people than me that could talk to exactly why that is, but it just is. It's a thing.
Yeah, a sim is not inherently dangerous. You are totally safe in that bad boy.
The way that the training, again, was going on when we left was less effective than when Drew, like you and I, started pilot training, or like when Bri and I started pilot training, and you, like, we got a lot more rides in the airplane. We got to build that airmanship that much more. And I think that between that and just getting to continue to fly as a FAIP has helped us build up our airmanship that much more.
So what does the next 5 years look like for you guys?
I had to give it to you.
Thanks, nailed it.
Commitments up in 2026. What's up? We need to get through, I need to get through flying training unit Casey 10. So Casey's just on that. Casey 10. A lot of Caseys. I got to get through flying training unit. He's already in his unit. You know, my squadron is going away. So he's in the 32nd Air Fueling Squadron. I'm in the Deuce. The Deuce is going away. The Deuce is going to the KC-46. I'm going to be in his squadron here pretty soon. What that will have to hold for us, who knows? Ideally, perfect world, we'd love to go KC-10s to Travis and, you know, spend the rest of our commitment there. Yeah. Potentially looking to getting hired by a reserve squadron there, whether it's in the 10 or the 46, depending on when the 46 does officially come online and takes over squadrons at the 2nd or the 32nd or at McGuire or Travis. And then ultimately we'd like to fly for the airlines, potentially doing reserves on this as a side gig. But yeah, that's where we're at.
Yeah.
That's our Air Force feature.
Okay, well, I love you too. Thank you so much for doing this with us. I mean, it's such a pleasure.